Colleagues, welcome to this webinar. This is the third in a series of three. We've held, as part of the Climate and Cities series, we've held two webinars, one on air quality, one on energy. And we're really, really delighted to welcome you to this webinar, which is going to be focusing on waste. And I think when many of us think of local governments, one of the first things we think about is waste, the role that our cities and local governments play in making sure that our cities and communities are clean, that waste is dealt with. And I think many mayors will say to us that the first thing that people notice about your city is how clean the streets are, whether the waste is cleared. And this is something which gives a really important impression. But I think that what we really want to talk about today is obviously the function that cities have with respect to waste, but thinking also about how cities can turn waste from something which is costly, which is a big challenge, which is a burden for the local community, into something which is a resource and an opportunity. So we're really delighted to have two wonderful speakers to give us two very different perspectives on that particular issue. And just before I hand over to Lorenzo, who's going to be facilitating the session today, I just want to let everybody know that this event is actually a webinar series which is co-organized by a number of different organizations. You'll have seen them in your invitation. My own organization, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, which brings together cities, local governments and ministries of local governments from across 53 member states of the Commonwealth, together with the City Diplomacy Lab at the Columbia Global Center in Paris, and working with, obviously, the City of Montpellier, the government of Maharastra, and also the Columbia Global Center Climate School. So it's a very broad cross-section of partners, I think, reflecting the complexity of where we find ourselves and the complexity that cities are having to deal with right now on our behalf as citizens living in cities and local communities. So really just wanted to whet your appetite a little bit for the event, encourage you to ask plenty of questions and to engage in a robust discussion. And I'm going to hand over to Lorenzo, who's going to lead us through the session today. Lorenzo.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for the introduction. As you said, my name is Lorenzo Kihlgren Grandi. I am the founding director of the City Diplomacy Lab at Columbia Global Center, Paris. And as part of the Cities and Climate Solution series that you introduced, our goal is to focus on climate challenges faced by cities worldwide and identify, analyze, and share the most inspiring solutions for a sustainable present and future. And when we talk about sustainable urban development, few issues are as crucial yet complex as urban waste management, of course. In most countries, solid waste management operations are typically a local responsibility. About 70% of waste services are overseen directly by local public entities. Of course, waste management represents a major challenge for those administrations. For example, every year, humanity generates more than 2 billion tons of solid waste, and at least 33% of that is not managed in an environmentally safe manner. Global waste is expected to grow to 3.40 billion tons by 2050. Waste disposal is responsible to 3 to 5% of the overall greenhouse gas emissions in cities, yet since these emissions are methane mainly, and methane is 87 times more powerful than CO2 in retaining heat in the atmosphere, well, waste is basically responsible for 30 to 40% of the temperature increase experienced today all over the world. Consequently, addressing climate change through the lens of waste is a very powerful tool. But it's more than that. It also means building a healthier cities, creating jobs, generating sustainable economic growth. How to do that? As a member of academia, I have to say scientific innovation is essential too, but is not enough. It has to be combined with innovation in governance and specifically in local governance. And today we have the possibility, thanks to the participation of our distinguished guests, to understand how we can draw the guidelines to be followed in these fields. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Claire Hart, Vice President of Montpellier Méditerranée Métropole for European and International Relations, and the City Councillor for Montpellier alongside Mayor Michael Delafosse. A social change maker and expert in corporate social responsibility, London-born Claire Hart is passionate about gender equality and social inclusion through grassroots mobilization and a fervent charity activist. And Mr. Samir Unhale, the State Joint Commissioner of Municipal Administration of the Government of Maharashtra. Currently, Mr. Unhale is working on digital transformation and data initiative, affordable housing, and issues relating to larger urban areas. He has worked in executive leadership positions in the cities of Ulhasnagar, Dhule, and Nanded. Mr. Unhale wrote several books, including City Reflections, Practitioners' Experience in Urban Governance Amidst at Certain Times, published in October 2022. Claire, Samir, thank you so much for your participation and welcome to the webinar. Before we dive into the topic at hand, as Lucy kindly mentioned, I would like to invite our audience to use the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. You can use it to ask questions throughout the panel, either to one guest, one panelist, or to both of them, and we will take the time to answer those questions in the second part of the webinar. Now, as mentioned, the goal of this webinar is to inspire, to get inspired by the action and vision of champion cities around the world. And for this reason, the first round of questions is about a best practice. I would like to ask our panelists to present one inspiring best practice in waste management with the support of a photo. And I would suggest to start with Samir and ask my colleague Andrew Wells if he can kindly share on screen Samir photo. And I would ask Samir to tell us why you chose this image and what is the message it conveys.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for Mirora members participating. So this, is an illustration. There is a town called as Karad, which is of population 70,000. And it's a small town, medium town in Maharashtra. And what you are seeing in this photograph is prior to the Swachh Bharat mission or the Clean India mission, which was started upon 2014, and a lot of initiatives which were taken after that. A specific focus was also put on the legacy dump sites which were lying, and this, I believe, is the case in many places in the global south. It could be the cities from Africa, from a bit of other parts, where a lot of this untreated garbage was lying, and an initiative was taken in the Swachh Bharat 2.0 for all the 5,500 towns and cities in India, including Maharashtra. And what you're seeing here is this dump site which was lying idle was put up for all, it was remediated scientifically. All the underlying garbage was clean, the dry waste, the wet waste, the organic manure, all that part was segregated. And finally, the entire very ugly site really to see was, removed. And this small town showed that, the legacy issues with global cities of global south of legacy dump sites can be remediated. And you can see in the rightmost side of the photograph that the entire place was cleaned up, and you are seeing a wet waste processing plant there, and also a small city beautification effort where you find a small lawn and garden, and you are seeing chairs in that garden. So that what was earlier a site of, a very ugly site, very unsandy peg, the tremendous methane, such dump sites create, and which have a major, carbon contribution from any city. And this initiative, which was supported from the state, from the central, from the federal government, from the provincial government, and for the city government, all that fundings came together. The technology solutions were also shared within all the tiers of the government. and funding, technology, capacity building, use of private sector, the corporate sector also rose up to the occasion, and it also adopted the new technologies and then provided a dramatic transformation, as you are seeing, from the earlier place into the new. And once the legacy issue is clear, you also find that in the rightmost photograph, you're finding that there's a wet processing plant. And so the entire cycle of waste processing, we are talking of, recycling, we are talking of, renewability, we are talking of waste as a replenisher. It is, ideologically, or maybe, in the conceptually, we treat waste as something that has to be get rid of. So what actually now this new, after this dump site remediation, what you are seeing is that every solid part is taken as a resource and not as a waste, which is to be get rid of. And therefore that resource is to be upcycled. And I think this fundamentally, or maybe, conceptually, when you try to understand that every solid part in the city that creates is a resource, and this resource can be upcycled, this resource can be reused, this resource can be used as a replenishment. And, therefore you go ideally into a circular economy for the city, and post-circular, the circular cities, we are seeing cities that are able to generate gas out of it, energy out of the solid waste which lie. And this actually why we chose onto this photograph especially was to show the dramatic changes which, interventions from cities can achieve. Because sometimes the magnitude of the problem is to such an extent that there is a possibility of the municipal or the city officials getting overawed by the magnitude. And, sometimes if the problems becomes very different or difficult, people tend not to attempt it at all. So what we actually showing was this, this very inflection point into the city solid waste management issue, that we are, once we showcase that we can make differences, visible differences of that magnitude seen to the citizen. Even the city responds to such initiatives. Even the citizens, you will find, are more willingly taking the concept of waste segregation, of waste proper scientific disposal, and you find the entire city, like this municipal governments, the citizens, the councillors, the private sector, the community sector coming together and showing that change, that we feel that this Indian experience of the Swachh Bharat mission and the Clean India mission can also be shared with all our friend cities around the world. And that was briefly, the photograph actually that we had chosen, that yes, we can make the change, however difficult or however huge the challenge might appear. Secondly, there is a tremendous scope for collaboration and cooperation, and all the tiers of government coming together for finance, for technology, for maybe project management skills, for the project conceptualization skills. And we are seeing an entire new genre of climate technologies. We talk of IT, of information technology, we talk of BT, of biotechnology. Now I think we have come to this decade of CT, which is the climate technology, which which will be covering various parts of the city functioning and delivering the results on ground, creating impact on the communities with this combined efforts of using technology and the political system together. So, Lorenzo, that was, very briefly, I felt was this very short part to show that yes, change can happen. And when we come together, the change is definitely easier and much more achievable. So that was the very short part on this small intervention done by this city of Karar in the state of Maharashtra, India. So thank you, Lorenzo. For any other issues, I'm very happy to add on to other aspects of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samir. This is really food for thought for us. You have shown the power of transformation through waste management. We can see this transformation is physical, but also in behavior and in government, especially with, as you mentioned, the this approach that is inclusive of the different actors and residents of a place. Thank you so much for inspiring us with these photos. And I would like to now give the floor to Claire and ask her the same question. What's your photo and what the story behind it?
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. Thank you, Samia, for a very interesting presentation. And thank you very much to Lucy, too, for a great introduction. Hello to everybody. I'm delighted to represent the Metropolitan Council of Montpellier here today. And of course, our president, Michael Delafosse, to tell you a little bit more about how we are handling and working, moving forward on the question of waste management. It was said very clearly by Lorenzo in his introduction that waste management is a big overriding issue for all of us in our metropolitan areas. And I think the organization of this event is very important to pool ideas, to bring us together, put our heads together so that we can share what we're all doing. So thank you for that. I'd like to begin by giving you a bit of background. And the background is the law in France on what we call the anti-waste for a circular economy. Now, this was a law that was born in 2021, at the beginning of 2021. And the goal of this law is to completely transform our linear economy, producing, consuming, and throwing away, into what we could call a circular economy. So that's the basic notion here, is taking everything, turning it upside down and doing it differently. The law is for us a major breakthrough because it brings in its wake new financial, technical and regulatory tools for waste prevention and circular economy motivation. So we are working within this framework. And I need to say that before I go any further on the photo that you have in front of you. So what does that mean for us? It means that we have 5 main areas that we have to work on. First of all, reduction of disposable plastics, which I think is something that we're all working on. And I know that it's the case as well for the Global South. Consumer information and awareness building is very important. We are fighting to reduce our waste as a whole. That's probably the main aim for all of us. And we're working as well on solidarity reuse. So making sure that we're bringing back recycling and reuse with a goal of solidarity, which is very important as well. We are carrying out a number of different actions against what we call planned obsolescence of objects. So that too is important. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And of course, all of that would be nothing without virtuous production methods and methodology. So that's where we're going. Since 2020, Montpellier metropolitan area has been heavily committed, strongly committed to implementing what we could call an ambitious zero waste strategy. It's an ecological and an energy transition, if you like. What we're doing here is transitioning to something new. And it really involves bringing on board our residents, the citizens of our metropolitan area. Citizens, but also businesses, of course. So we're working hand in hand with the economic sector in order to accompany them too, in modifying their behavior patterns and moving forward to greater waste reduction. I'd like to say at this point that we could call this a turning point. It's a turning point in our practices because this is something we never did before. It's an environmental turning point. It's a societal turning point, of course. And it is really taking shape under the impetus, under the energy of the community. And that's an important thing to say. I don't think we can do anything if we don't have the community on board. So that's important. We have created what we would call a strategy for collection, for sorting, for recovery, for awareness building, and for waste reduction. And we have built our zero waste policy, which is almost our guiding principle for everything that we do today regarding waste at the Metropolitan Council. So this has created, if you like, a strategy. We've got the strategy. We know where we're going. We know where we're headed. We have the local community on board. And we are looking now as well at budgetary measures, which will allow us to bring in our waste policy and waste production and waste reduction, of course, into a program of prevention, particularly of household waste. And I really want to emphasize that point. If we're working on awareness building, then we're working on as well households and what they produce in terms of waste. I'll give you some facts and figures later on, but maybe perhaps the first thing we need to take home with us here is that we're talking about an objective within the metropolitan area of reducing household waste by 16% by 2025. So we're in the middle of the process. We're on the right road for the moment, and this is a decrease, to put it into kilograms. This is a decrease of 615 kilos produced per person per year to 516 kilos per year per inhabitant within our metropolitan area. So it's enormous, and if we can impact in that way, reducing by 16% by 2025, and of course, working beyond 2025, it's already a massive change. So in our metropolitan area, within our zero waste roadmap, we have enormous deployment of local composting solutions and waste collection solutions. So that's one aspect, one priority. Using bio-waste, of course, is an offshoot of all of this. We also have an expansion of our systems for reuse and repair of objects, and I'll come back to that later on as well, but very important point, and it brings us back to planned obsolescence of our objects. We know that this is one of the big ways of mobilizing change. We're also working on awareness building. Once again, I said this is incredibly important, and we can never underestimate how important it is to keep bashing away at behavioral change regarding prevention of waste and the zero waste objective. Support for professionals. I talked about businesses before. We need to provide solid support, and that comes through providing specific binning systems, also recycling systems, which we help them to acquire. We are, I would probably sum it all up by saying, a facilitator and a demonstrator of eco-responsibility. That's what we do. That's what we're there to do. That's what we're there to push. And I'd now like to come on to the slide that you have in front of you, which is a slide showing one of our very important projects and a very key part of our strategy, which is OC Consigna. Now, OC Consigna is a company. It's a business which actually has a slogan, which is "Our bottles have several lives." And we're coming back to the good old-fashioned tool that I think all of us knew in our youth, which was that we would recycle our bottles and that we could recycle them for a very, very long time. Maybe not definitively, but in any case, for a very, very large number of reuses. So this is what we do with OC Consigna, and we have supported OC Consigna since the launch of the company, and this was in the summer period of 2023. So it's a relatively recent approach, and it involves, of course, what you can see in the slide here, which is the creation of our very first bottle washing plant in our metropolitan area with strong financial support from the Metropolitan Council. OC Consigna is running a glass packaging reuse plant as well in our area, which had several main missions. The first being awareness building, once again, to the general public, which is a leitmotif for everything that we do. Support to professionals, once again, which is another leitmotif in everything we do, in their transition to reuse, as well as organizing, of course, because you can't do this without organizing and structuring, collection, washing, and sale of our glass packaging, of our bottles. So all of that comes into the process. And we believe that glass deposit reuse is a massive opportunity for us, which is both environmental, economical, but also a way of enhancing the attractiveness of our metropolitan territory. And that is a very important thing as well. We believe that this is an area where the public comes relatively easily because it's something they can understand. It's something that kids can get involved with as well. So, it's once again an idea that is almost recycled from the past, but is very, very much positioned in the 21st century and moving on. So reusing glass packaging obviously massively reduces greenhouse gas emissions as compared to glass recycling solutions. I think you know this. And we will also be working to reduce raw material use and glass in particular. And it's, for us, a question of ensuring, reinforcing our territorial resilience as well. Using less energy as we do this. And it's as well a way for us to deal with the profusion of waste, which results from single-use packaging, which is highly energy intensive. And we know today that glass is reheated to 1,500 degrees centigrade when it is recycled. So you can imagine to what extent all of this impacts our global footprint. And energy, with the cost of energy today, is one of the big overriding factors that we have to take into account. So you have in front of you here examples of what is done and how it's done. And thanks to reuse, our bottles are no longer considered to be waste. Simply, they have become something which are brought back, collected, washed, quality is controlled systematically, and they are reconditioned without being broken. I'm going to give you, just to finish this first part, I'm going to give you some hard fact about this. We're talking here about an energy saving of practically 80%. We're situating it at 75%. So it's a very, very high score. 77% less CO2 emissions. So we're reducing our greenhouse gases enormously, and 52% of water saved along the way. Reduction of environmental impact, of course. We're meeting our consumer demand because they really enjoy glass deposit. It's something that they fit into very well. And we are promoting, of course, the circular economy and local production methods. And also an important factor is we are anticipating legislation, as we're pretty sure that we're going to come to this all over France very, very shortly. I'll stop there, Lorenzo, for the first part and let you move on with your second question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. This was very inspiring. We saw how you were able to set ambitious goals embedded in a formal strategy and then engage everyone on it. And I really like that being innovative also includes getting a look at the past practices that proved to be efficient, and we may have wrongly put them aside, including this example from the valorization of glass, which is a great, as you mentioned, a great opportunity to reduce emissions and also provide this image of a city and a community which puts eco responsibility at the center, as you mentioned. This is a great insight. Thank you, Samir and Claire, on what you are currently doing. Of course, your cities are conducting many different activities, and maybe we can dig into them a little bit more in the Q&A. But for now, I would like to ask your support to have together a vision about the future. What can we do more? What can we do better about solid waste management at the local level. So for that, I would like to start this time with Claire and ask you a keyword that is something we can keep in mind when having this view to the future. Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. I think you're muted.
There we go. Thanks, Lorenzo. So I would say that our keyword, the keyword for our waste department and all the action we carry out is the idea of shifting from a waste service to a resource service. So that's our keyword, from waste to resource. And when we consider the challenges of global warming, the destruction of biodiversity, and really poor management methods of our natural resources, we know today that our system of production and consumption, as we've known it into the past, is under intense question. So we have to shift. We have to take it to something new. And this idea of moving into resource with the zero waste policy is a way as well to meet the objectives of national law as well, which is, obviously we're all engaged in national laws. We have to follow our national laws, and that is very important. So to come back to the notion of resource, that means that we are developing sorting of bio-waste at source, that we are developing, I mentioned this earlier, neighborhood composting systems. I talked about getting the public on board when we were talking about glass deposit, but it's the same thing with compost. We've seen people that really we never saw before, that we didn't know before, coming out and getting involved in neighborhood composting systems. Again, all of this is carried by the metropolitan area. We have 50 operational sites, and today, the idea of composting has become something very educational in our neighborhoods, in our communities. Our schools are now equipped as well with composters because we're creating more and more vegetalized playground areas in our school complexes. And compost is part and parcel of all of this because we are creating mini gardens for the kids to actually produce vegetables, particularly, and herbs on the school sites. So they have their own little compost system. Parents can also take their compost into the schools. School lunches are also used, obviously, to fill up the compost, and the compost is used to produce vegetables. So that is very, very important for us. We're also developing individual composting to create resource, and we have actually diffused, if you like, or distributed 37,000 individual composters, free of charge, which are given to the local community. People that live, for example, in apartment blocks can set them up on their balconies and can use them for their plants. And we encourage, obviously, small level production of fruit, vegetables on people's balconies. So once again, a strong message sent out to the general public and a way for us to really get the general public on board. To go a step further, moving forward, we're developing more and more reuse systems as well. And we're really promoting in the public mind, in the public mentality, the idea for users to extend the lifespan of their objects. I'm thinking kettles, I'm thinking toasters, I'm thinking hair dryers. And it's a way for us of really telling the general public, please, when your hairdryer breaks down one morning, don't just throw it into the trash can. We will help you to repair it, and you'll probably be able to get a good couple or 3 more years of use out of your hairdryer. So we are developing and deploying reuse points in recycling centers with collection of objects in good condition, and what we call a repair cafe, where people can come along with their object and have it repaired in front of them. And taking it a step further, if they want to become repairers themselves, they can do as well. And again, we've seen people that never really got involved in this kind of action in the past becoming repairers and helping others to repair their objects. It's a very, very virtuous process that we really, once again, we really enjoy developing, deploying, and rolling out in the metropolitan area. So we're deploying recycling facilities as well, and we are carrying out a number of studies at the moment, and that's important to take stock of the situation at regular intervals. So ongoing studies for the deployment of general recycling centres so as to ensure a territorial network in support of our residents' desire to change. So if we have an area where there is a lot of need for a repair cafe, we will work to set up a repair cafe in that specific vicinity. And that, again, is important. And this evolves with time. We're on an ongoing change pattern, change habit process. So we need to accompany that process. We're also promoting, and this is an important factor, sustainable hygiene. And sustainable hygiene, whereby we're encouraging people to come up with more simplified methodologies, create their own hygiene products, and get away from the throwing away of plastic bottles continually when our shampoo runs out, when our soap runs out, or our gel for the shower runs out. So this too is very important, and we're working with the student population in order to distribute, for example, washable panties for women, cups and towels, and we distributed 1,000 hygiene kits in November last. So we're really on it at the moment, and we know, and this is where very often we can coordinate environmental problems, but also social and societal issues. We know our students have less and less purchasing power today. So when we roll out these techniques, we're helping our students to really live in a much more simplified manner with much lower costs. You know, there's this continual recycling and using methodologies that will take the student through the year rather than just through a month is extremely important, and definitely helps our students to maintain a healthier and better standard of living. We are also considering the promotion of the use of reusable diapers for kids. Once again, this is a very, very big cost for our underprivileged families, and reusing diapers and working on the washing of diapers is something which is very important. And to be perfectly honest with you, was not very well developed in France as a whole, and particularly not towards our more underprivileged families. So this is something we're working on as well. And when we do all of this, once again, I want to bring this full circle back to awareness building among young people, students, but also kids, children. And we're developing an awareness building program throughout all of our schools from the earlier stage. The city council, the Montpellier City Council, runs the schools, the primary schools, the kindergartens and the primary. And so we're bringing this in at a very, very early age, because we are absolutely convinced that this is a way of taking this forward to adults, to the parents, to the families. So if the kid shouts out about reuse and making waste into a resource, as I said before, the families tend to listen, sit up and listen, and take it on board. So we're developing workshops and awareness building tools for the general public, and particularly focusing on youth audiences and on really the youngest public at all in our schools. So I think that probably rounds up this idea of making waste into a resource, something that we can actually use for a much, much longer lifespan than we did in the past. Lorenzo, I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to carry on. We could probably speak all day on these subjects, so I'll hand over to Samir now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. This is very inspiring. You certainly have a holistic vision on sustainable development, where you add this very important element of well-being in the broadest sense of the term, which can only be achieved with an active participation of the residents, as you correctly highlight that this is something very valuable for cities everywhere in the world, regardless of the geography, socioeconomical conditions, and so on. And I would like, of course, to hear from Samir what's his vision for the future, how to do better in terms of sustainable urban waste management.
Yes, thank you, Lorenzo. And Clara, it was fantastic to listen, what other cities around the world are doing. So it's a great learning, and I hope, we could continue such learnings there. Regarding, one question I always get that now, earlier I was working at a city level, and now probably I have a responsibility at the state level looking at 400 municipalities. So one question always, comes to our mind is that we require a very accelerated pace of making change happen, and simultaneously in the 400 cities. So we get this probably, what we feel is that now doing one good thing in once a while in one of the cities, well, is not sufficient. We'll have to think of, the space and the scale that the change that we are looking at is something that we will have to work on that and how to make the change happen at accelerated pace and at the wide scale. And that's one of the challenge that I felt working now at a provincial and a state responsibility one. Secondly, I felt that if you look at maybe 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, and how would be the solid waste management sector really respond? The first I felt was that we almost have over 30 to 35,000 cities in the world. That is an estimate, because every definition in every country differs. So we do not have a single, global unit to really tell which is urban and what is not. But by and large, if we feel we have around 30 to 35,000 cities and towns, and we want to make change happen in all those cities and towns, maybe in matter of, say, months, if not weeks, we require an entirely new architecture, of collaboration and cooperation at this global level. And especially I raised this point because of the City Diplomacy Lab, the name I spelled. And I really was, attracted to this idea that cities probably could, engage with each other more often, share their experiences much more. Like, the example of I just heard from there that how they have got these glass bottles recycling, and, the city itself, doing on that. So maybe, some city has something to share. And therefore, maybe 5 years down the line, if I look at it, I would be looking at, more stronger sharing of knowledge and practices across the cities. Now, how to make that happen when the international system is so nation state centric? I don't know how to do that. But, this is a great opportunity. I felt that this practices can be shared, and we don't want the 35,000 cities and towns reinventing wheel in every sector and every activity, so this could be done. Third, I felt was that again, we probably could move ahead from, the webinars that we're doing, and probably, create the executable format of ideas, so like, if we do have a comparable, due process of law everywhere. There is an element of transparency everywhere, and the processes are fairly comparable everywhere. So, if we could have an idea that I could share, how the bottle recycling, how was the DPR made, how was the project conceptualized, how was the tender, issue, tender flash, how was the technology comparison done. So, we could, those cities who are interested, they probably, would be much faster at, replicating an idea at a global level and the pace that we are wishing. I found this idea very interesting, and if that format is available somewhere, and maybe, if better possibly, then we could have maybe 1,000 cities, replicating that in maybe matter of weeks rather than years that it would take. And this could be implemented in the various other sectors, maybe like, plastic recycling is something that, of course, is a very important part. And we had done when I was early working as a CEO for a smart city, we had used a digital tool, and it was almost like, the collection all over of plastic waste or dry waste, that kind of idea, that we had connected over 800 dry waste collectors, which normally, within this part of the world are so sometimes underprivileged, unskilled, untrained. So we got this 800 people together on a digital platform, and it was almost a very simple digital tool. If I at my home, I have say 1 kg of plastic waste, or maybe others which are other within the apartment building. If there are certain waste, so they could put that message, and someone could come and collect it and recycle it in a legally regulatory acceptable manner, and a certificate used to come from the environment department. So now this was an illustration of using digital tool for a city in which the mobile penetration is very high, and the use of applications as simple, as very widespread. So probably the digital transformation tools for the waste management, and that too at the intersection of the citizens, I think is something which will pick up very fast. And those replication strategies, maybe maybe the city diplomacy lab could be the best, the idea to do that. If we could share the basic operating part, like this is the draft DPR, this is the draft tender document or contract that are made. It was very easy. Of course, there will be local customization which will be required as per the local conditions and legal regulatory requirements. But then this replication could happen so far that, I must share one idea which is not directly linked with what's happening, but we are working in COVID times in cities. And just 3 years back, it seems, it is almost ages have gone to that experiences. But, it was just 3 years back. And at the city level, we know, it was Clara would be remembering, how cities had to deal with this crisis, and the pace with which the ideas had to share with each other. So the accelerated implementation and execution of ideas, I think, is going to be very, very crucial, where the response time is going to be very, very less. And we will have to make things happen at a vast scale, maybe at, like in India, we say we have 5,500 cities and towns. And if we have to make something happen, we want to all those 5,500 cities responding in a way to adopt a particular precautionary measure. Like, for COVID, like we use masks, the waste disposal during COVID times also was, quite a challenge, a new challenge as to how to deal with it, because the municipal staff and the contractors had to be trained regarding, disposal of the COVID related mask and the COVID material, the precautions to be taken. So, this is just an illustration as to how the response time is going to be shortened ahead. And we will be requiring all those cities and towns to accept and adopt and make that execution happen through their organization, their employees, their contractors, their private vendors. And as I say, the speed is going to increase again and again. And maybe, we'll be requiring this response times to be reduced very fast. So this, I felt was also the challenges, which we'll have to deal more strongly, and probably will be requiring such support system for that more strongly, that if there's a good idea, it's available here, the tender document is here, push it, customize it for your local needs and local legal provisions, and you can make things happen on ground. That was the third I always felt was that the need of, financing for cities to ensure, adoption of climate technologies in solid waste management. Because as we know, the solid waste management or even the liquid waste management sector is one of the very important, contributor. The carbon contribution from the city, a substantial part comes at least in the global south or in some parts where the temperatures are generally high. So the carbon contribution from the solid resource sector, as I would choose to call, rather than calling it as waste, I will prefer it to call it solid resource. The sector contribution becomes very high. So the era of, I like calling it, this is the third decade of the third millennia. We have entered a new millennia. Probably it required COVID to shook us, that tell that you have entered the new millennia, and the solving methods, problem solving methods of earlier millennia are not going to be sufficient now, even in solid waste management. So we'll be requiring climate technology, we'll be requiring climate finance, we'll be requiring digital transformation, we'll be requiring the collaboration of cities across cities, to adopt and learn from each other. And what can happen in one city needs to happen in 35,000 odd cities and towns, maybe in matter of weeks, if not months. So next 10 years of, how would be the climate issues and the solid waste management relevance to the climate issues, we'll have to deal. Of course, the financing part, which I said, will have to be also very, urban local bodies or the municipalities, the metropolitan area, the capacity building at the municipal level is also very much required, because, sometimes, when we look at the range of the capacity that we have in cities, we'll be requiring, capacity building more into this thing. The traditional way of handling waste, yes, we are doing it for maybe centuries together, but now the volume and the population and the density has increased so much that, we will have to, get the new innovations coming up, and the innovation, the contribution of innovation sector into the solid and liquid resource upcycling sector, I think also requires a lot of support now, because the connections of maybe the paper, the plastic, the glass, the electrical waste, the electronic waste, the waste of the batteries is something new which didn't exist for the municipalities or the city government maybe 10, 15 years back. We never had to think of, electronic waste in cities. But now the magnitude and the impact it can create on land pollution due to the chemicals is staggering. So, that's the reason I said that the way we handled our cities for last maybe 2 million years, or maybe even prior to that, now this is a different age altogether. We require new technologies, new associations, new financing, to really make it happen. Especially regarding electronic waste, of course, we are trying to, get the regulatory framework, get the vendors together, like mobile manufacturing happen. The batteries are used, but the toxicity that goes with the batteries are, quite substantial. So we also, require things to happen. And I think most importantly, the making the cities themselves strong enough to resort to those challenges and respond to those challenges, I think is also equally important. Because, if, I'm sorry, I'm entering into a different sector, I apologize. But the interconnections are so strong that any issue in solid waste or the solid resource upcycling, as we say, it is a, very intricate web of issues and, action. So probably when we deal with it, as you had said, we require a very synthesizing, holistic, framework, and one-to-one correspondence of cause and effect is no, it doesn't function. Everything is many-to-many correspondence of many causes and many effects continuously interacting and interplaying, and we see, emergent phenomena, which is sometimes, very different than what we have earlier expected. So, I feel the broader framework within which the city issues will be resolved will be substantially different, and there are certain maybe 5-6 points I share. And regarding the solid resource upcycling sector, the climate technology associated with it, the capacity building of the cities, finance, I think, is going to be the new way in which the next maybe 10 to 15 years might emerge for the various cities. Of course, there are very, very issues. If we keep on talking, it will be endless. So I will cut short myself here. And if at all something is required, we're always there. But it's a very interesting topic, and I think we require each and everyone to be a part of the solution on this issue. So thank you, Lorenzo. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Samir. I really have the feeling in this conversation that's only the start. Of course, we're paving the way for stronger collaboration between cities as they face similar challenges, and by joining forces, they can be more powerful. Thank you so much, Samir, for making this reference to the importance of city diplomacy. And well, I subscribe 100% to the importance of capacity development as well. And allow me to share on the chat the website of the City Diplomacy Lab. We conduct on a regular basis capacity development activities for free for municipalities all over the world with a specific thematic sector. We just completed yesterday a training, for example, on migration and how city diplomacy empower cities in this important challenge. Montpellier was one of the participating cities, by the way. And I would like now to invite our audience to ask any questions they might have to one or both our distinguished panelists. You can use the Q&A session. I can see there is already one question from the chat. So I read it. Globally, less than 9% of plastic is recycled, and the majority of it ends in landfills or is incinerated, releasing toxic chemicals and has various other impacts on the environment. What do you foresee the consumption of plastic use and waste management being in the future to address its environmental impact? Claire, would you like to maybe start with this answering this question?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's a very important question. The question of plastic is an absolute, really a knot in the head of everybody that deals with waste management. I'm sure Samir will agree with that. What we're doing at the moment is we have organized a recycling system with a specific dedicated bin in which we can bin our plastics, and it will be taken to a recycle plant where the plastic will be recycled, but only if it's recyclable plastic. And you know how complicated that issue is today. Only certain plastics are able to be recycled. So there is a higher level than our level as municipal or metropolitan councils, which is that of production at the national level. We are fighting at the moment in our different organs of power to prevent certain types of plastic being used in supermarkets. Still, we still find bananas with a plastic tube around them. We still find I don't know. Let's say let's use the example of cucumber cut in sections, sold in a plastic box. And this is still a really major issue because we as cities are recuperating all of this plastic waste, which could be eliminated from the source. You know, we know that the best waste is the waste we don't produce at all. And when I talked about this idea of our waste service becoming a resource service, it's very difficult with plastic to make that happen. We can do it with many, many types of waste, but with plastic, it's complicated. So, you know, I really want to push the point that there has to be national legislation. We are part of Europe as well, and we know that the European Commission is working long and hard on this subject too. And we absolutely have to make leeway on the question of, you know, of forbidding the use of certain types of plastic at the European level and at the national level.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I forgot to mention these questions come from Mr. Harry Sherrington. Thank you, Harry, for this question. Mr. Samir, would you like to also provide an answer to this difficult question?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very complex situation, actually, because the ease and the cost that the plastic offers to the vendors and the consumers is such that, you know, sometimes it gets very difficult to convince the customer, you know, to give off, you don't use plastic. Especially packaging is mostly where the plastic use as far as consumers are concerned. As far as city is concerned, it mostly comes out of the packaging material. And there have been efforts, you know, like in India, there is an Environmental Protection Act under which we have the rules made for the plastic and plastic recycling. There has been bans imposed, penalties done. So usually, you know, we have a national legislation and even the city level regulatory framework, like, you know, The municipal governments in India can also make their own bylaws and charge levy penalties. But sometimes we feel, the various instruments of public policy that are available at a city level, that is the legislation, regulation, support, budgetary, creating an office, creating interventions, creating, public support to, missions on that, awareness missions on that. So all these levers of public policy which a city government has, I think will have to be used bit innovatively, so that, as I say, there is no one-to-one correspondence of a problem and a solution. Now we have passed that era long back. We will require a matrix of solution and a matrix of problem. So as far as the plastic issue is concerned, I can just share some example that we did. That, as it was mentioned by Clara, we have a separate plastic collection in some cities in Maharastra now. We are having a dedicated day in which the dry waste is collected from apartment buildings. Like, it will be all the paper and plastic and maybe metal and electronic. Those dry waste are collected on a dedicated day, at least in some cities. I won't be saying it is possible in every, but some cities that experiment is being done. We are engaging the CSR funding and the community organizations to take the lead, because when the community goes to the citizens, there is a better response and resonance to the ideas somewhere. So that approach has been tried. And certain isolated efforts are being now seen in recycling the plastic, like collection. We have plastic beautification, aesthetics in plastic material was somewhere tried. We have, people creating, using the use of plastic in building material or plastic in gardens. But despite all these, individual and small efforts, I feel the challenge requires massive efforts, which still, I must agree, is not seen very strongly in many of the places. There have been the why of the issue has been accepted. Now the challenge is what and how, what to do and how to do it. And I think this is still a evolving and emerging sector. And I think, again, some examples of plastic to fuel has been tried by the cells which are using. Then the plastic collection has to become more and more efficient. So some efforts were made of incentivizing the plastic collection was also mentioned by Clara, the loyalty points concept can be used for, the plastic waste issue. So those experiments could be tried. But I still feel, this is an emerging field which still doesn't have found a concrete, impactful solution. I mean, I must agree on that and confess on that, actually. And I think this is something where we will be requiring more and more solution, because if 90% of plastic is still not getting recycled, then we require global level effort. I heard there are global conventions being planned up. There are partnerships which are coming up. But still, we, I feel, have a lot of ground to really cover to claim that, we are creating impact as far as the plastic waste is concerned. We still have a lot of work to do, a lot of ground to cover. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, please, Claire, you wanted to add something, right?
Thanks, Lorenzo. I just, Samir made me think of something. There's another way we call it, the municipal and the metro.
Claire, can you hear us? I think there is some issues with the audio. Claire, are you with us? There is a little communication challenges right now.
Level, which is reduce ourselves. And I'm thinking of something which is our hospitality aspect.
Claire, are you still with us?
Do the, for example, we have a lot of people that come, the citizens come and we eat.
Oh, I'm sorry, we cannot hear you very well. Claire, are you still connected? I'm sorry, I apologize with the audience for this little technical challenge. Technology is sometimes unpredictable. I take this while we wait for Claire to come back to the webinar. I would like to ask a question to Mr. Samir Unhale. You mentioned the importance of innovation in this field. And I would like to ask you, from the perspective of Maharashtra, what has been the exchange in terms of collaboration, joint activities, dialogue with academia and universities?
Lorenzo?
Claire, I can see you joined back.
I'm so sorry about that. Really sorry.
No worries. No worries. Absolutely. Please, you can conclude your point.
Okay. Shall I just continue? I'm very sorry,
please.
everybody. We just had a cut off all of a sudden. My point was that when we buy, thousands of plastic cups, thousands of plastic knives and forks, thousands of plastic plates every year, that is something that we can act on very solidly and very simply at our level. We know that there are alternative solutions, and we're pushing more and more for, obviously eliminating plastic water bottles, using glass. And we are now really forbidding use of plastic plates, cups, and knives and forks. So that's a really big thing, because honestly, I hate to imagine how much waste was produced every year from purely the hospitality facility at the metropolitan area.
Of course. Thank you so much, Claire and Samir, for your answer to the question by Mr. Sherrington. And I was asking Samir if you can actually both answer very briefly. We are almost out of time. What's the added value of collaborating with academia with regards to waste management? Samir, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So I think Mumbai is made really lucky to have the IIT, the famous Indian Institute of Technology, available in Mumbai. So there have been many collaborations at the government level and also at city level, in which the IITs and also other academic institutions do collaborate. There has also been a student internship program which has been made for the college students and the technology, graduates or undergraduates, who can participate into the functioning of solid resource and liquid resource upcycling mechanism. So the direct partnership with the IITs and the other, and an opportunity for the students to collaborate as interns in the solid resource upcycling sector are two specific initiatives, which I can definitely share. And the academic institutions do support the cities, at the technology level, and even consultancies are being done by some technology institutes and colleges. So those are the three intervention level I felt I could be sharing on academia and the resource cycling at city level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samir. Claire, please.
Well, I have to say we have a very similar approach to Samir's approach. We work very closely from many points of view with the academia world. We're very lucky to have big, solid, strong universities working with engineers being produced every year in the waste sector, so in tomorrow's waste sector. And we take on board these young engineers as interns during their year of training. So they come in, and every year we have interns from our engineering schools and our universities that come into the Metropolitan Council and that share the latest, most up-to-date, next-gen data with our teams. And that is very, very important. We can also use our academia to test out new solutions. That's a very interesting approach as well. And so basically, I would conclude it by saying that they are our permanent partners in, moving forward and creating tomorrow's solutions today.
Thank you very much, Claire and Samir. Well, we are almost out of time, but I would like to ask both of you if you have any final thought that emerged during this conversation. Samir, please.
I think the city level intervention to encourage people to, take recycling was a good learning for me from Clara's experiment of, the bottle cycle. I think that was a great idea. And, we have to connect to the needs of the citizens. If we have to make something happen at city level, I think was a great learning in my life. Yeah. Thank you.
Please,
Lorenzo, I think that for us, the key words is holistic, integrated approach. I think that is absolutely vital. The public on board, as Samir was just saying, is essential, is key to any kind of success. And I think we have to be ambitious and we have to dream about this. Imagine if we could reduce the costs of production of waste. Imagine what we could spend that money on. Imagine how we could improve our cities. Imagine how we could, offer greater opportunities to our more underprivileged members of society. The cost factor of dealing with waste is absolutely enormous. So, for us, it is something that we absolutely must buckle down and get sorted out. And again, the best waste is the waste we don't produce. Thus, our zero waste approach.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Claire and Samir, for your inspiring contribution. We have seen how broad waste management is. That's environmental, social challenges, economical challenges, narrative and communication challenges. But after all that is framed into a vision for the present and the future, which is participatory, which is inclusive, which lays the ground for a better, more resilient, more just future. So thank you so much for this inspiring conversation. Once again, I think this is only the start, cannot be the end at all. It's an ongoing conversation where we have cities as the protagonists. The innovation is experienced on the ground. There is a lot of interest in collaborating with local actors internationally, with academia. And so I think, this will be only the start of it. I really enjoyed this webinar. I hope our audience and panelists enjoyed it as well. I would like to thank Mr. Samir Unhale from the Maharashtra government, Ms. Claire Hart from the Montpellier metropolis for their insightful and inspiring contribution. And many thanks to Andrew Wells from the Columbia Global Center Paris, who coordinated this webinar series with me, to Ms. Lucy Slack from the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, co-hosts and deliverer of the initial remarks of our webinars. And last but not least, Avani Darne from the Columbia Global Center in Mumbai for her kind support with the communication. And of course, thanks to all of you in the audience for your kind participation. Goodbye and have a happy holiday season.
Thank you very much. Very, very happy.
Thank you so much. Goodbye. Goodbye to everybody and happy holidays.